Before we begin, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps bring more soothing stories your way. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Tasha Reed stood frozen in front of her apartment door, the bold red letters of the eviction notice blaring at her like a siren. Notice to vacate. The words were sharp and cruel, cutting through the haze of exhaustion she carried after another sleepless night. Her hand trembled as she plucked the paper from the door and folded it, tucking it into her pocket as though hiding it could make it disappear. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and burnt toast, a strange combination she'd grown accustomed to in the old building. Its peeling walls and flickering fluorescent lights had been her home for the past 5 years, ever since she left Jaden's father and started over on her own. It wasn't much, but it had been hers, a place where she could raise her son with love, even if the world outside wasn't kind. Inside the cramped one-bedroom apartment, the sound of Jaden's laughter greeted her. He was sitting cross-legged on the worn carpet, surrounded by a scatter of crayons and paper. His bright, toothy smile was a sharp contrast to the gray world Tasha felt like she was sinking into. "Look, Mommy," he said, holding up a drawing of a rocket ship flying past a colorful planet. "This one's going to Mars." Tasha forced a smile. "That's amazing, baby. Are you going to be the astronaut?" Jaden grinned. "No, I'm the captain. Astronauts take orders from me." Her chest tightened with a bittersweet pride. His dreams were as boundless as the stars, and she was determined to shield him from the weight of their reality, at least for a little while longer. She knelt beside him and ruffled his curly hair. "Captain Jaden, huh? Well, I hope you save me a seat on your spaceship." He laughed and went back to his drawing, completely unaware of the storm brewing in his mother's mind. Tasha stood and walked into the kitchen, her smile fading as soon as she was out of his sight. The small table was already covered with unopened bills, eviction threats, and final notices. She added the latest one to the pile and sank into a chair, her head in her hands. Tasha had always been a fighter. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, she'd learned early on how to make do with what little she had. But this was different. Losing her job at the diner had been the tipping point. When the owner announced they couldn't afford to stay open, she'd been one of the first to go, her position deemed non-essential. She had tried everything since then, applying for jobs online, dropping off resumes at stores, even asking for help from friends she hadn't spoken to in years. The rejections came fast and often, a relentless barrage that chipped away at her hope. Tasha glanced at the calendar pinned to the wall, the days marked with her messy scrawl. Interview, no call back, food bank, rent due. Time was running out, and the options were dwindling. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. They had just enough groceries left for the week, and she wasn't about to take food out of Jaden's mouth. She opened the fridge, stared at the near-empty shelves, and grabbed a carton of milk. At least Jaden could have cereal for dinner. As she poured the milk into a bowl, she caught her reflection in the kitchen window. The woman staring back at her looked older than her 32 years. Her natural curls, usually neat and shiny, were pulled back into a messy bun. Dark circles framed her brown eyes, and her once vibrant smile felt like a distant memory. Tasha carried the bowl to Jaden, who was still lost in his world of rockets and stars. She sat beside him, watching as he narrated an epic space adventure. For a moment, she allowed herself to be pulled into his orbit, forgetting the mountain of problems waiting for her in the next room. But as Jaden yawned and climbed into her lap, his small head resting against her chest, reality came crashing back. She held him tightly, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I'll figure it out," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I promise." The weight of her promise felt unbearable, but she clung to it anyway. Because for Tasha, failure wasn't an option. Not when Jaden's dreams were as vast and limitless as the sky. And yet, as she sat there in the dim light of their tiny apartment, Tasha couldn't ignore the nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, this time, her best wouldn't be enough. The sun hung low in the sky as Tasha boarded the bus downtown, her mind a whirl of hope and trepidation. Clad in her only good blouse and slacks, clothes she had ironed carefully the night before, she clutched her resume in a folder so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The job posting had seemed promising. A corporate cleaning company was looking for reliable staff, offering full-time hours and benefits. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability was a luxury Tasha craved. The bus rattled through the city streets, past shiny new developments that seemed to sprout like weeds where old neighborhoods once stood. Tasha looked out the window at the glossy storefronts and high-rise apartments, feeling a pang of resentment. Gentrification had taken over her community, replacing people like her with young professionals who wouldn't blink at a $5 latte or $3,000 rent. As the bus approached her stop, Tasha took a deep breath and stepped off. The building loomed above her, its glass facade shimmering in the morning light. She walked inside, her sensible flats tapping on the polished floor, and approached the receptionist. "I'm here for the interview," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. The receptionist, a young woman with sleek hair and a bored expression, pointed her toward a waiting area without looking up from her phone. Tasha sat on the edge of a cushioned chair, clutching her folder like a lifeline. The other candidates looked polished and confident, young men in crisp shirts and women in tailored dresses. She felt out of place, like an outsider trying to slip into a world that didn't want her. After what felt like an eternity, her name was called. The hiring manager sat behind a large desk, his thinning hair slicked back and his tie slightly askew. He barely glanced at her as she entered, his eyes fixed on her resume. "Tasha Reed," he said, his tone flat. "Yes, sir," she replied, standing a little straighter. He skimmed her resume for a few seconds before setting it down. "You've got experience in food service and retail?" "Yes," Tasha said quickly, eager to make her case. "I worked at Southside Diner for 5 years. I'm used to fast-paced environments, and I'm great at multitasking. I can—" The manager held up a hand to stop her. "We already filled the position this morning." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. "But I got a call for an interview." "Yeah, we had a lot of applicants," he interrupted, his tone dismissive. "Thanks for coming in." Tasha opened her mouth to protest, but the look on his face stopped her. It was clear he didn't care. She stood there for a moment, stunned, before forcing a tight smile and nodding. "Thank you for your time," she said, though the words tasted bitter. Outside, the warm sunlight felt mocking as she walked to the bus stop. She sat on the bench, staring blankly at the cars passing by. Her mind raced, replaying the interaction over and over. Was it her race? Her status as a single mother? Both? Or was the job market simply so saturated that there wasn't room for someone like her? She sighed, pulling out her phone to check her emails for any other potential opportunities. As she scrolled, a headline caught her eye. "Elon Musk to launch initiative supporting struggling families." She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the link. The article seemed almost too good to be true, promising grants, mentorship, and housing support for single-parent households. Her first instinct was skepticism. Programs like these often came with impossible requirements or were designed as publicity stunts. But desperation overpowered doubt. She clicked the link and read every detail, her heart pounding as hope flickered faintly in her chest. The application process wasn't overly complicated. A short essay about her circumstances, a few forms to fill out, and a submission of supporting documents. It would take her the rest of the day to gather everything, but Tasha didn't care. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of possibility. It was faint, but it was there. As the bus pulled up to take her back home, she made a silent promise to herself and to Jaden. "I'll do whatever it takes," she thought. "This time, we'll get a win." Days turned into weeks, and Tasha's life remained a precarious balancing act. The shelter she and Jaden now called home was clean but cramped, a single room with 2 cots pushed together and barely enough space for their belongings. Jaden adapted quickly, befriending other children and turning the room's bare walls into a gallery of his colorful drawings. But for Tasha, each day felt heavier than the last. She threw herself into applying for jobs, scouring bulletin boards, online postings, and word-of-mouth leads. Every application felt like a shot in the dark, her hope dimming with each rejection. At night, when Jaden was asleep, she worked on the application for the Tesla Family Initiative. The essay section had taken her hours to write. She poured her heart into it, describing her struggles and dreams in a way that felt both vulnerable and defiant. "I'm not just applying for me," she wrote. "I'm applying for my son, Jaden, who deserves a chance to grow up in a world that doesn't crush his potential before it even begins." Once she hit submit, a strange mix of relief and anxiety settled over her. The days dragged on after that, each one feeling like an eternity. The shelter had rules. Everyone had to leave by 7 a.m., even the children. Tasha and Jaden spent their mornings at the public library where she used the computers to search for jobs while Jaden immersed himself in books about space and science. Mommy, did you know people used to think the Earth was the center of the universe? Jaden asked one day, his small face alight with curiosity. Tasha smiled, brushing a curl out of his eyes. They didn't know what we know now, but that's why we keep learning, right? Jaden nodded, his enthusiasm a brief balm to her frayed nerves. One night, as Tasha sat on her cot scrolling through her emails, her breath caught. Subject: Congratulations, Tasha Reed. You've been selected for the Tesla Family Initiative. Her heart pounded as she read the message, her eyes widening with each sentence. They had accepted her application. Not only that, but she was among the few recipients invited to Austin, Texas, to meet the team behind the initiative, and Elon Musk himself. Tasha clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a cry of disbelief. She reread the email twice, then 3 times to make sure it was real. The next morning, she called the program's coordinator to confirm her acceptance. When the woman on the other end of the line congratulated her, Tasha's voice broke as she said, "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." The following week, Tasha and Jaden boarded a plane for the first time in their lives. Jaden was thrilled, pressing his face to the window as the plane lifted off, the ground falling away beneath them. "Mommy, we're flying!" he exclaimed, his joy infectious. Tasha smiled, her own nerves easing as she watched him. For the first time in what felt like forever, the future seemed to hold something other than struggle. When they landed in Austin, a driver greeted them at the airport and whisked them away to a hotel. The room was more luxurious than anything Tasha had ever experienced. Soft beds, fluffy towels, and a view of the city skyline. That night, as Jaden lay fast asleep, Tasha stood by the window and gazed out at the glowing lights of the city. For the first time in weeks, she let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, life was about to change for the better. The Tesla campus in Austin was a marvel of modern design, a sprawling expanse of sleek buildings, lush green spaces, and cutting-edge technology on display at every turn. Tasha and Jaden were greeted by friendly staff who handed them visitor badges and guided them to the conference room where the event was being held. Jaden's eyes widened as they walked past a line of electric cars, their futuristic curves gleaming under the bright Texas sun. "Mommy, look! They're like spaceships!" Tasha smiled, his excitement lifting her own spirits. "Maybe one day, you'll design something like this." Inside, the room buzzed with energy. Other families sat at long tables adorned with nameplates and gift bags. Tasha spotted mothers and fathers from all walks of life, their expressions a mixture of hope and disbelief. It was clear that every person here had a story, a journey marked by resilience and struggle. The air shifted as Elon Musk entered the room. He was unassuming in a black t-shirt and jeans, but his presence commanded attention. He smiled warmly as he greeted the group, shaking hands and exchanging a few words with each family. When he reached Tasha, she felt a flicker of nervousness, but held her ground. "Tasha Reed," she said, extending her hand. "Elon Musk," he replied, shaking it firmly. His gaze was direct but kind. "I've read about your journey. You've been through a lot, but you've also shown incredible strength." Tasha was taken aback by his sincerity. "Thank you. I'm just trying to give my son a better life." Musk crouched slightly to meet Jaden's eye. "And what about you, young man? What do you want to be when you grow up?" Jaden's face lit up. "I'm going to be a spaceship captain and fly to Mars." Musk laughed, a genuine sound that echoed through the room. "Mars needs good captains. Keep dreaming big." The event began with presentations from the Tesla Family Initiative team, highlighting the program's goals, providing housing stability, educational support, and job training for families in need. As Tasha listened, she felt a growing sense of possibility. This wasn't just charity. It was a partnership designed to uplift families long-term. After the presentations, the recipients were invited to share their stories. Tasha hesitated, but when the microphone was passed to her, she stood. "My name is Tasha Reed," she began, her voice steady. "I'm a single mother to an incredible boy named Jaden, A few months ago, we lost our home, and I thought I had hit rock bottom. But I didn't give up because I couldn't give up. Not with my son depending on me. Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. Programs like this remind us that people care, that we're not invisible. I'm grateful, but I also know that there are so many other families who need this kind of opportunity. I want to use this chance to not just survive, but to thrive, and to help others do the same. The room erupted in applause as Tasha sat back down, her cheeks flushed. Jaden beamed at her, his pride evident. After the speeches, the families were invited to tour the Tesla facilities. Jaden was mesmerized by the robotics demonstrations, asking endless questions about how the machines worked. Tasha found herself captivated too, marveling at the precision and innovation around her. Later, as the event wound down, Musk approached Tasha again. "You spoke beautifully," he said. "Your story is exactly why we started this initiative. We want to do more than just provide support. We want to create a foundation for families to succeed." Tasha nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. "Thank you for giving us this chance. I won't waste it." "I don't think you will," Musk said with a small smile. "And who knows, maybe Jaden will be leading our Mars mission one day." As Musk walked away, Tasha looked down at Jaden, who was still clutching a small model Tesla car they'd given him as a gift. "Mommy," he said, his voice full of wonder, "do you think we'll really get to Mars one day?" Tasha knelt beside him, her eyes filling with hope. "If we keep dreaming big, baby, there's no limit to where we can go." And for the first time in years, she truly believed it. Back in her hometown, Tasha could hardly believe the transformation her life had taken. The Tesla Family Initiative wasted no time delivering on its promises. A new apartment in a safe neighborhood was waiting for her and Jaden, the first year's rent fully covered. The moment she opened the door, Tasha felt a flood of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a hesitant hope that this could truly be their fresh start. Jaden ran from room to room, his laughter echoing through the empty space. "Mommy, it's so big, I can have my own room." "Yes, baby, your own room," Tasha said, smiling as she blinked back tears. She had spent so long in survival mode that the idea of stability felt foreign, almost unreal. The support didn't stop there. The program had connected Tasha with a career mentor who helped her enroll in a technical certification program for administrative professionals. The courses were intense, but Tasha attacked them with determination. Most nights she stayed up late at the kitchen table, poring over study materials while Jaden worked on his homework beside her. "Mommy, what are you learning?" he asked one evening. His pencil paused mid-doodle. "How to be really good at office work," she said with a grin. "Spreadsheets, schedules, presentations, you name it." Jaden tilted his head thoughtfully. "So you'll be the captain of your own office?" Tasha laughed. "That's the plan, Captain Jaden." The biggest change was Jaden's new school. It was a far cry from the underfunded public school he had attended before. His new classroom was bright and welcoming, filled with books, computers, and hands-on science projects. Jaden thrived, joining the robotics club and impressing his teachers with his curiosity and creativity. At home, he often talked about his latest projects. "Mommy, today we made a robot that can pick up a ball," he exclaimed one afternoon. "That's amazing, baby. What's next?" "I want to make one that can clean my room," he said with a mischievous grin. Tasha laughed, her heart swelling with pride. She knew Jaden's success wasn't just a result of the program's resources, it was the resilience he had inherited from her. But even as life improved, Tasha found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. One evening, as she sat on the couch after finishing a homework assignment for her certification program, she scrolled through the news on her phone. Stories about rising rents, unemployment, and systemic inequality filled her feed. She thought of the other families she had met at the shelter, people who were still struggling to find their way out. "This can't just be about me," she whispered to herself. The next day, Tasha reached out to her program coordinator and asked how she could get involved. "I want to help other families like mine," she said. "There are so many people who need what you've given me." The coordinator was thrilled, offering Tasha a spot on a community advisory panel. The panel's goal was to identify barriers that families faced and advocate for systemic changes to break those cycles of poverty. Tasha accepted without hesitation. Weeks turned into months, and Tasha's life continued to stabilize. She completed her certification program and secured a job as an office administrator at a local nonprofit. The role wasn't just a paycheck, it was a purpose. Her work with the advisory panel became a passion project, one that allowed her to use her voice to fight for families like hers. At their meetings, she shared her experiences candidly, emphasizing the need for policies that address root causes rather than offering temporary fixes. "We can't just throw money at the problem," Tasha said at one meeting. "We need affordable housing, better schools, and access to training programs that give people real opportunities. If we can lift one family out of poverty, we can lift entire communities." Her words resonated, earning her respect and admiration from her peers. At night, as Tasha tucked Jaden into bed, he often asked questions about their future. "Mommy, do you think we'll ever go back to the shelter?" "No, baby," she said firmly, stroking his hair. "We're building something strong, something no one can take away from us." Jaden nodded, his small face serious. "Good. I don't want you to be sad anymore." Tasha hugged him tightly, her heart full of gratitude. The sadness he spoke of had been replaced by something far more powerful: hope. Tasha's new life was more than she could have dreamed of just months ago, but she couldn't shake the memories of where she had been. The families she left behind at the shelter, the systemic barriers that had pushed her to the brink. These thoughts fueled her resolve to make a difference beyond her own circumstances. Through her work on the Tesla Family Initiatives Advisory Board, Tasha began attending community forums and public meetings. Her voice quickly became one of the most compelling in the room, a blend of personal experience and passionate advocacy that few could ignore. One day, she was invited to speak at a regional Tesla-sponsored conference on equity and innovation. The event was buzzing with policymakers, business leaders, and nonprofit organizations, all eager to discuss solutions to social issues. Tasha felt a surge of nerves as she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. She scanned the crowd, her gaze landing on Jaden, who was seated in the front row with a proud smile on his face. His presence grounded her. "My name is Tasha Reed," she began, gripping the podium. "I'm a single mother, a survivor of homelessness, and a graduate of the Tesla Family Initiative." She paused, letting her words settle before continuing. "A year ago, I was sitting in a shelter with my son, unsure of how we were going to make it. I wasn't just battling poverty, I was battling a system designed to keep people like me from climbing out." Tasha spoke candidly about the challenges she faced: the lack of affordable housing, the difficulty of finding stable work as a single mother, and the racial biases that permeated every step of her journey. "This program gave me the support I needed to rebuild my life," she said. "But what about the families who don't get that chance? We need to stop treating poverty like an individual failure and start addressing it as a systemic issue." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. "We need more programs like this. Yes, but we also need policies that ensure families don't fall through the cracks in the first place. Affordable housing, fair wages, accessible childcare. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities." The audience erupted in applause as Tasha stepped back from the podium, her heart pounding. After the conference, Tasha was approached by several attendees, including policymakers and nonprofit leaders, who wanted to collaborate with her. But the biggest surprise came when Elon Musk himself approached her, his expression one of genuine admiration. "You were incredible," he said. "You've taken your story and turned it into a call for action. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need." Tasha smiled, still processing the moment. "Thank you. I just want to make sure other families don't have to go through what we did." Musk nodded thoughtfully. "Let's make that happen. I'd like you to take on a more active role in shaping the initiative. Help us expand its reach and impact." Tasha's breath caught. The opportunity was both thrilling and daunting, but she knew she couldn't pass it up. "I'd be honored," she said. The next few months were a whirlwind. Tasha joined the initiative's leadership team, working alongside experts to design new programs and advocate for systemic reforms. She spoke at more events, lobbied for affordable housing policies, and collaborated with local organizations to expand access to job training and education. Her work became a source of purpose and pride, but it was also a constant reminder of the disparities she was fighting to dismantle. One evening, as Tasha was preparing for another speaking engagement, Jaden sat at the kitchen table, sketching designs for a school project. "What's this one?" she asked, glancing over his shoulder. "It's a robot that helps people find homes," he explained. "It'll scan the sky for empty apartments and send people a map." Tasha's throat tightened with emotion. "That's an amazing idea, Captain Jaden." He looked up at her, his small face full of sincerity. "I just want everyone to have a home like we do." Tasha hugged him tightly, her heart swelling with pride. "You're going to change the world one day, baby. I just know it." That night, as Tasha stood before another audience, she thought of Jaden's words. Her speech was not just for the family struggling today. It was for the generations to come, for children like Jaden who deserved a future where their dreams weren't limited by circumstances they couldn't control. "I stand here today because someone believed in me," she said, her voice steady. "Now it's our turn to believe in others, because when we lift each other up, we all rise." The crowd's standing ovation felt like an affirmation, not just of her words, but of the path she was forging. Tasha's voice was no longer just her own. It was a beacon for those who needed it most. Years had passed since Tasha first stood in front of the eviction notice that had upended her life. Now, as she adjusted the microphone at the podium of a large conference hall, she felt the weight of those years. The struggle, the growth, the victories, and the hope that had carried her through it all. The audience before her was a mix of policymakers, corporate leaders, and advocates. The conference, themed around equity and innovation, was a testament to how far Tasha had come. She was no longer a participant in the Tesla family initiative. She was now one of its leading voices. In the front row sat Jaden, now a teenager, tall and confident, his face alight with pride. His backpack rested beside him, no doubt filled with sketches of rockets and robots. Tasha took a deep breath and began. "5 years ago, I was a single mother who had lost everything," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I was living in a shelter, desperate for a way out, for a way forward. I was scared and I was tired. But most of all, I was determined. Determined to give my son, Jaden, a life where he could dream as big as the stars he loved so much." She paused, letting the memory settle over the room. "Through the Tesla family initiative, I found stability for my family. But more importantly, I found a way to use my voice. Because as grateful as I was, and still am, for the opportunities I received, I knew that my story wasn't unique. Families across this country are struggling under the weight of a system that's broken, and they deserve more than charity. They deserve change." The room was silent, the audience hanging on her every word. "We've made progress," she continued. "We've expanded this initiative to reach hundreds of families, created job training programs, and lobbied for affordable housing policies. But the work isn't done. True equity requires more than good intentions. It requires action, bold, systemic action that lifts every family, not just a lucky few." She looked out at the crowd, her gaze firm. "We need to keep asking ourselves, what kind of world are we building? One where poverty is a life sentence, or one where every child, regardless of their zip code, has the chance to reach for the stars?" The applause was thunderous, but Tasha wasn't done. "Let me tell you a story," she said, her tone softening. "When my son Jaden was 7, he told me he wanted to be a spaceship captain. I didn't have the heart to tell him that we were so far from that dream that I couldn't even see it. But today, as I stand here and look at him, I realize he wasn't just dreaming for himself. He was dreaming for us, for a better future." Her voice caught, but she pressed on. "And now it's my turn to dream big. For him, for every child, for every family that's been told they don't matter. Because when we dream big, we open doors that have been shut for far too long." After the speech, Tasha stepped down to a wave of handshakes and congratulations. Elon Musk himself approached her, his smile genuine. "That was powerful," he said. "You've become the heart of this initiative, Tasha." She smiled back, humbled. "I'm just trying to do my part. There's still so much to be done. That's why I think we need to expand this program internationally," Musk said. "And I'd like you to lead that effort." Tasha blinked, stunned. "Me? You've proven that you're not just a beneficiary. You're a leader," Musk said. "This initiative wouldn't be what it is today without your voice and your vision." Tasha felt a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She glanced at Jaden, who was now chatting animatedly with one of the program's robotics mentors. "I'll do it," she said, her resolve firm. "For him. For all of us." That evening, as Tasha and Jaden walked back to their hotel, the city lights glittered like stars above them. "Mommy," Jaden said, his voice full of wonder, "did you ever think we'd come this far?" Tasha smiled, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "I didn't just think it, baby. I believed it. And now it's your turn to dream even bigger." Jaden looked up at the sky, his eyes filled with possibilities. "Then I'm going to be the first captain on Mars, and I'm taking you with me." Tasha laughed, her heart brimming with pride. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." As they walked on, the stars above seemed closer than ever, a reminder that hope, no matter how small, can light the way to unimaginable heights. Thank you so much for watching this story. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed it and want to see more inspiring stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear from you. What time are you watching this video, and where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below and let us know. It's always amazing to see how far our community reaches. And remember, every share, like, or comment helps us spread these powerful stories to more people. Thanks for being part of this journey, and we'll see you in the next one.